And good morning, and thank you, of course, to Nell, who's taught us that the machines are right on our heels, so no pressure there. And I think also to Bruce that actually what we need to do is chill out and relax a bit, which is good news, really. This is Alex. Alex is 57, and she suffers from secondary progressive multiple sclerosis. What that means is she can't move. She can't move her hands. And such is the pernicious nature of this disease that it was only very recently that she recovered the ability to speak. Alex lives in Hampshire with her husband, Eric. And Eric is, she's completely dependent on Eric, and Eric is her primary carer. And of course, that places a whole load of pressures on Eric too. And the support systems that society offers Alex sit right at that painful intersection between healthcare and social care. Alex is harried from pillar to post to receive the kind of long-term care that she needs. And this is so often the case, isn't it, for those with debilitating long-term chronic conditions. And so too for older people. You know, in 1900, the average life expectancy in the UK was 45. If you're a woman in your 20s today, you should expect to live into your mid-80s. Life expectancy for those of us in the UK has gone up by 25 years in my lifetime alone. This is the era of grey hair. It's the silver generation. Frankly, I dream of going grey, but that's another story. So these are big societal problems that we're trying to face, aren't they? They are systemic challenges, each happening at a population scale, supporting an aging population, connecting the lonely. So much in the press, on the public media today, about the lonely. Supporting those with long-term conditions and the need for more effective and yet lower cost social care. These are the kind of opportunities I like to have a pop at. I want to share with you a bit more about Alex's story today, but my key message is that everyone can take something from these kind of complex, multi-stakeholder challenges and what I think is genuinely an ingenious approach to solving them. So my name's Frazer, and I run PA's Innovation and Technology Lab based in Cambridge. We are 250 designers, scientists, engineers, product developers, makers, and we spend every day trying to solve big problems like these. It's the reason we come to work in the morning, and it's the reason we work so hard. Just in case my boss is in the room. We support good consumer goods companies facing the rise of the power base of the online retailer, and life sciences and pharmaceutical companies creating connected healthcare solutions, and banks and financial services community where we help them to think differently about how to engage with their customers. And it's probably no surprise that my industry, that of creating new products and services, my industry is also undergoing change. The currency of just being a smart bunch of people that can turn up and solve problems doesn't have the same currency that it used to. The problems have much broader implications, have a larger set of stakeholders, and aren't going to get solved by an app or some clever bit of science or technology. Going digital in your organization is necessary, but it's not sufficient. We're a smart bunch of people. We can sort it out. This just doesn't carry weight in our industry today. We know that invention is not enough, because it isn't just about making a new thing. Invention is a single point instant solution, if you like. It's a first of type. Invention happens once. It's inventing the motor car or some new drug or other. And of course, inventions get better over time, That's innovation, perhaps. Innovation is a process. It's a constant iterative approach to making things better. You need that. And of course, it's sister disruptive innovation, which seeks to create new markets, serve underserved markets with fundamentally different offers, new business models, perhaps by relaxing the quality of the offer or creating a new price point. So you need innovation. Well, I'm the Chief Innovation Officer, so of course you need innovation. And yet the kind of problems that Alex faces, when we try to solve those, when these are macro problems that affect large parts of a community or a consumer base, when we need to disrupt, when we need to be truly disruptive, this takes cunning, it takes creativity, it takes guile, an inquisitive restlessness, a tenacious mind, and that elusive combination of both technical and commercial expertise. I think it takes ingenuity. Ingenuity is something else. Ingenuity has the inventiveness and the innovation for sure, but it has other things too. Ingenuity has that knack to be able to reframe a problem, to turn complexity into an opportunity, to empower cross-functional teams to iterate cheek by jowl without borders or boundaries, where the role of leadership is to remove constraint, not to impose it. To start to embrace ingenuity, to make that step beyond the process of innovation, we know you need three things. So I thought I'd share those with you and give you some examples on where I've seen them being effective. You need a purpose, an experimental mindset, and you need the right approach to scale. Purpose. For too long, organizations have been focused on the what and the how, with their best intentions, in the firm belief that this is what they need to do to improve shareholder value. Understand your customer as best as you can, appeal to their unmet need, drive efficiency in your business to deliver the relevant and attractive products and services. Ka-ching. And for too long, this model has presumed that seeking a higher purpose was at odds with a higher profit. Of course, we all talk about purpose, as Simon Sinek refers to it as the why, and yet we pay no more than lip service for fear of having a negative impact on the bottom line. Not so. You see, if we don't get purpose right, it makes a whole load of other things much more difficult. First, we won't get the best out of our people. We know from Dan Pink's studies what it is that motivates people. It's a sense of autonomy, a sense of destiny, a vision, a higher purpose. This is increasingly the case with millennials. Do we have any millennials in the room? Thank goodness for that. Most important people in the room, ladies and gentlemen. Purpose is the single biggest thing that people of university education and above choose when they think about when they're choosing an employer. Time and again. The Virgin Pulse study says that more than 3/4 of millennials choose culture and purpose over salary and benefits when deciding where to work. And in studies of this kind, salary and benefits time and again come up as about third on the list of priorities. So purpose is the best way to attract talent. Purpose is the reason people stay late. Purpose is the reason people work so hard. Second, without a clear purpose, decision-making is so much harder. I've seen this in my work supporting companies sort out their innovation portfolio. When a 2,000-person company has 300 active innovation projects going on, they could do with some decision-making. Saying no to a few things and having a well-understood purpose makes that task so much easier. A clear purpose will drive profit. It is not at odds with the profit motive at all. And the best metric for whether your purpose is clear is whether it's what your customers say about you. Let me give you an example. Clean Space is Lord Dreyson's, is a product and service that was launched a couple of years ago by Lord Dreyson's startup in London. The service builds on the concept of crowdsourced air quality data. Using a personal air quality monitor that measures CO2 in real time and sends it to the cloud, Clean Space are able to create a street-level map of air quality data around London. Tens of thousands of users of the system. People can not only make healthy choices about how they travel, but they're also rewarded for doing so. But Lord Dreyson's higher purpose was to build a cleaner city, to enable citizens to be part of that movement to making the air that we breathe more breathable. Employees and customers alike were aligned to that purpose, appealing to the interests of the individual, yes, but also performing a higher good. Experimental mindset. The second characteristic of the ingenious approach is the mindset, that inquisitive, experimental mindset. We often hear that innovation is about embracing failure. Embracing failure. Somehow it's okay to fail. And when people have a fear of failure, that's what's inhibiting them from being innovative. I'm a bit skeptical about embracing failure. I'm not a big failure fan myself. Who particularly wants to fail? So what the approach of the experimental mindset does is it turns that around. When we design and create new products, when we have a go and see what will work and what won't, we're not trying to fail, but rather taking on board the principles of lean startup. This isn't about failure, it's about conducting an experiment. And the only kind of experiments that fail are the ones that weren't set up in the first place, right in the first place. When creating new things is a series of experiments, we don't need to fail at all. We're asking people to be inquisitive and try stuff out. But we're not asking them to fail. And the experimental mindset helps us to think in non-linear ways, to be playful, to make divergent leaps. Another example, Holland & Barrett. Holland & Barrett is a high street retailer focusing on health and wellness. And what they sell is a load of vitamins and minerals. It's a sort of one-size-fits-all market. And yet we know that we're all very different when it comes to our needs and our diet in wellness and so on. And the principle behind their Healthbox service was to personalize the experience by taking a tailored approach to health and wellness, a customer of one approach that sees individuals having a personally crafted vitamins and minerals regime. With Holland & Barrett, we developed the concept, we took it to market in about 9 months, and this was done through a sequence of iterations, testing with customers, absorbing feedback, tweaking the product and the offer until we found out what worked best. The whole thing was a series of experiments in that way. And thanks to these experiments, when the time came to invest substantial sums in launch, we had a much higher confidence in the effectiveness of the offer. The experimental mindset was embedded into every aspect of the approach, from the packaging and the design through to consumer engagement and product formulation and fulfillment. So the ingenious thing becomes conducting the right set of experiments to learn as fast as possible, to reduce risk, and to do so at the least cost. Ingenuity is about mindset. It's about experimental mindset. And while the purpose gives you the reason for having a destination, it's the experimental mindset that helps you towards that destination, wherever it may be. Finally, the third element that makes up the ingenious approach, having the right attitude to scale. And here's the rub. The approach to scale is a bit of a dichotomy, really. If you've seen Dragon's Den, you'll have seen just how often the dragons reject the ideas on the grounds that they won't scale, don't they? They'll alight on some reason or other why a proposed solution is not going to scale, and that's it. Game over. And because this is the approach that's most commonly cited. Get the product right, get your first small number of customers, and then scale the thing, bam, as fast as you can. Venture capital is a rocket fuel. You either hit the moon or you blow up on the launch pad. Intriguingly, this isn't the case. Because although it stands to reason that if so many startups fail because they can't scale, surely whether or not we think it's going to scale is a good indicator of whether or not we should invest. But not so. The research company Startup Genome observed that 70% of more than 3,000 startups that they looked at failed because of premature scaling. We conjecture that if you reject ideas at an early stage because you can't see how they scale, you risk throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Now, that isn't to say you don't need to scale a solution. Of course you need to scale. But if you let the fear of scaling get in the way, you're missing a trick. Scaling is a barrier to entry. If everyone else thinks that something can't scale, they'll steer clear of it. The blue ocean, if you like. And the wonderful thing about this hyper-connected world where Moore's law survives and where the network effect and the gig economy and AI are dominant forces enabling new businesses and new business models, it means that businesses large and small, young and old, have fundamentally different opportunities to approach scaling. Having the right attitude to scale means kicking the scaling can down the road for as long as you can. And what you'll find is that if you've got your purpose and your experimental mindset, then the scaling problems are not the problems you need to fix first. They are the problems that you need to fix last. Let me give you an example. You might have heard of Hyperloop. Hyperloop is this insane invention by Elon Musk to enable travel at 3 times the speed of high-speed rail and deliver an on-demand experience. Hyperloop reduces a 200-mile journey to a 20-minute trip. It will fundamentally change the shape of our cities and indeed our nation. It can transform economies by making many more people have access to many more places in much shorter time. And just like the bicycle changed our perception of distance, so too with Hyperloop. And on the surface of it, there are so many reasons why Hyperloop should get rejected if we worry about how we're going to scale it. How can you install the infrastructure required? How can you make the kind of connections to existing transport networks? How do you build the safety case? How do you get the underlying physics right? How do you command the level of capital investment required to make something like this a reality? And yet they are making it a reality. And our work with the startup Virgin Hyperloop One is focusing on exactly that, accelerating the delivery of technology, physicists, systems engineers, enterprise architects, working on the plans for the system and its rollout, speeding up the development process by about 30% with this experimental mindset. And yes, we think about scale, but we're also being really mindful that there are some scaling questions that we just don't need to answer right now. So, Ingenuity begins with a purpose. We use an experimental mindset to constantly iterate towards an answer or a candidate set of answers. We let the results of our experiments guide us as we go, and we kick the scale can down the road for as long as we possibly can, confident that the challenges of scaling a solution will be much better understood and eminently more solvable when we get to them, when they need to be solved. So I'll take you back to Alex and her challenge. In 2013, the County Council of Hampshire, where Alex lives, faced the same challenge that so many local authorities around the UK are facing: how to support Alex with a rapidly diminishing budget. Many local authorities sit on the brink of bankruptcy every year. These problems just aren't getting addressed properly, and if we don't take a fundamentally different approach to the provision of social care in the next 10 years, we're going to see these authorities going bust. So our support in this challenge involved a purpose, an experimental mindset, and the right attitude to scale. And with Hampshire, we created a brand new kind of support infrastructure for older people, those recovering from illness, those suffering from mental illness, and many more besides. Well, the purpose was really clear, isn't it? There are literally thousands of people who need support to live independently, and yet with that bit of support, they can lead really productive and fulfilling lives. And we took an experimental mindset from the beginning. The industry is dominated by providers offering bespoke solutions, costly and quite prohibitive. So what we didn't do was go out and procure huge amounts of this kit, but rather through a set of experiments, we were able to much better tailor the offer that could be made. And so with scale, a traditional approach would have been to try and see the population as a whole, create a one-size-fits-all solution, and then scale it and take that sort of approach to service delivery that just normalizes. But our starting point was the individual service user. Every single service user is different and has a different set of requirements and expectations. What we didn't try and do at the outset was just simply generalize the problem and create a generic solution. But seeing every service user as an individual, we were able to tailor the approach to them as best we reasonably could and then build out from there. The service is called Argenti, and of course we are scaling it. We've rolled it out to Barnet Council in April last year, and just yesterday we started in Essex. So it's an ingenious approach to the delivery of social care that uses as much as possible off-the-shelf connected technologies, things like Amazon Echo, for example, to help people feel and be more in touch. So that's how we helped Alex. But this is just one Alex, and yet whether you're a financial services institution trying to understand the needs of your customers in a world of the barrage of online consumer offers, or a consumer goods company trying to understand what customer lifetime value actually means in this insanely transactional world, or a regulator or a government agency looking at the increasing diversity of your stakeholder base, every one of you has an Alex. So I'll close with a question, or cheekily two. Can your customers articulate your purpose? You, your people, your shareholders, yes. But do your customers, do your end stakeholders understand your purpose? If you were to stop one of them in the street, would they be able to articulate it? Would they be able to tell you what it was? If you get that right, a whole lot of things become a whole lot easier. And finding ways to thrive in this increasingly disruptive environment requires much more than invention and innovation. And that's where ingenuity, human ingenuity, is critical. So finally, what have you done to inspire the experimental mindset in your organization? When did your people approach something as a series of experiments where failure, and by extension the fear of failure, just wasn't a consideration? Just think whether you've managed to take advantage of the pace, decision-making, and frankly liberating experience of the experimental mindset. I'll gladly share lots more stories with you on that topic, but I think I've run out of time. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. This has been my experiment for the day, so thank you for listening.